Hello everyone and welcome to Beyond the Veil background information. We're doing another creatures one and once again we're still in the serpent category, but we have an interesting one with Lamia. Now, as always, we start with a quote where something about them is mentioned. Then the quote is from one of my stories. Then we talk about the actual mythology or the bits that I've used that have inspired my development of this being within the veil, and then I give you the creature profile. So it's nice and simple, and let's get into it. Having been engulfed by a Lamia before and fighting an echidna, you'd think my eyes would be coloured, but I have met others and know they are kind and as human in heart as in guise. I will never view the world as narrowly as you, brother. That's a quote from the last rattle. There. There are at least 3 beings in mythology around Europe known as Lamia, and though only one has anything in common with the original, it is the Greek story most are aware of. Even within the Greek version there are 2 forms, one of which we've discussed with the Dracania part in the Pythene, but here we'll discuss the Greek Lamia as the inspiration for those in the Veil universe, and discuss the Basque and Bulgarian Lamia briefly. As we reach the description of the beings, you'll see I've been a bit of an animal nerd again, as the species group Laminidae, named for Lamia, includes some of the most famous sharks around, like the great white, though I use a Wobbegong as a model for my Lamia shark, just as a note, but that's for later. Now we'll start with the Basque Lamia. This is a nereid or siren collectively titled Lamiae, and live around rivers. They appear to eat at night, and local stories say if a farmer left food out for them, then they would plough their field for them. Some even state bridges have been built by them. They are reasonably benevolent beings, appearing as beautiful women with long hair and duck feet, although some describe them as more akin to a mermaid, and they generally give help to those that help them. They're thought to comb their hair by the water to charm men, and they have aspects that match mermaid and siren tales, but also the fae and even trolls a little. It's said if a Lamia doesn't build her bridge by cockcrow, she would have to leave that area. A missing stone in a bridge is thought to be proof of this, although some believe the development of churches in the forest near their rivers drove them out as well. Some believe these beings are from the other side of the rainbow, and that there is a male version too, one that's incredibly strong, sometimes called Lamiac, but variants like Meruac and Maidac are sometimes used to describe them. Though the male forms produce dolmen at night, and that the male forms step into people's houses at night. It's for these attributes that these Lamiac are not associated with the Lamia, not associated to Lamia in the Veil. Instead, they are considered among the various other nereids and therefore nymphs, so they'll be covered another time. Now, the Bulgarian Lamia is similar to the Greek and thought to be named from it. Only this one is a dragon. Lamia is often associated with other female monsters in mythology like Echidna, and thereby to be linked to a dragon is rather normal. Plus, as discussed with the Dracania version on all fours, they are sometimes called dragon. In Bulgarian it is lizard-like with scales, has around 3 to 9 heads, and sometimes is described as being yellow with webbed wings. I'm not sure what webbed wings means, but it's certainly an interesting picture. Like the beast we'll speak of soon, this creature dwells at the bottom of the sea and lakes, although sometimes it is described around mountain caverns or tree holes, and can prevent humans getting their water supply without getting a sacrifice. The Lamia brings drought and is considered enemy to Saint Ilya and a benevolence May, another draconic entity. But it also becomes the dragon in the Bulgarian version of St. George and the Dragon. In this story, it's said when each head is severed, rivers of fertility flow. Let's talk about the Lamia of Greek mythology by telling you her story. Lamia was a beautiful queen of Libya who had an affair with Zeus and bore him many children. Some believe one of these children would later be the monster Scylla. We'll discuss it another time. Though Lamia was thought to be very happy and very joyous with her children, Hera found out, and, as we are all well aware, she is not very forgiving towards those who engage in the affairs or their children. Hera either killed or kidnapped Lamia's children. Sources vary. The happy mother went utterly insane in response and is said to have then started snatching up and devouring any children she came across, vengeful and yet utterly insane. The more she did this, the more her body twisted and changed into something more hideous. Some stories state Hera had cursed her with insomnia that also included the inability to close her eyes. Zeus apparently showed a little pity for Lamia and made her not only a prophetess, but gave her the ability to remove and reattach her eyes as she desired. She was thought to have finally turned into some half-snake and half-woman creature that lurked around the coastline, snatching children by the ankles for wandering away, and was used as a bogeyman for Greek children. There's no set story about her fate aside from this, no story of any hero that particularly comes to her to end her suffering, but instead her story becomes contorted, as she is later associated with Lilith and even interpreted as Lilith for their child-eating habits. But various interpretations have altered the story, from Hera killing the children to turning Lamia mad, so she killed the children, and some state that Lamia had testicles, making their gender questionable, though this is probably just another part of making her a monster. This is particularly because in later years Lamia turned not only into a child eater, but another siren, pulling men to her that might give her more children. Diodorus is our main source for the serpentine interpretation of Lamia, with other sources melding into this Empusa or Dracania style look, yet never referring to her as a dragoness. Some of the Middle Ages interpretations marked her as a four-legged creature of the desert that ran around to slaughter men she lured in and any children that got close. But Keats' poem of describing her as hiding in the guise of a snake and the subsequent artwork it inspired, many of it similar to Lilith art, solidified this idea of her as a snake woman, though modern scholars like to claim her to be a Dracania. Personally, I like the interpretation I heard on a podcast that made me think of a Wobbegong shark. Considering Lamia is thought to mean fish, and we link it to great whites, not to mention potential thoughts of her being mother to Scylla, I rather enjoyed the thought of some flat-headed shark that mimicked the bottom of a pool and waited for a foolish child to step on them before snap. In fact, I've mixed that thought with the beautiful serpentine woman to make this shark-snake creature that was one of the attackers in ancient Venom. So here's my interpretation of the Lamia for the Veil. Side, Night Predator, Sadark, created by Baal, created for punishing Lamia. Created when Lamia was a beautiful serpent that Baal wanted in his control, but she knew this would put her children at risk and refused him, so he used his demonic powers to curse her and her children from then on. Physical description. They can appear as handsome or beautiful people. They can appear as seemingly half-human with a serpentine body that's always lounging in water, but their real form is that of a long serpentine body that lounges on the bottom and had rough scales that match corals and mosses around them. Their bodies are mottled and their head is large and flat with stalks about their head that their eyes can sometimes hang from to spy on prey. Abilities. Can remove their eyes and put them back in to spy on where their prey might be. Can be enormous with incredibly fast reactions. They can see into the future, so if you snatch up their eyes you can get a fortune from them. They are incredibly strong too and can breathe underwater with ease. Most known for devouring children. Weaknesses. They are not immortal and can be killed if you rip them in half, but you can also control them if you snatch up their eyes whilst they're out of their heads. Number, about 1,000 or so. They're really quite rare. Well-known beings, the first Lamia. Characters in stories. Currently, I haven't got any featured, but for a villain that's killed by Quetzalcoatl in Ancient Venom. Final thoughts? They're just a very interesting species, and I do like talking about and including some of the more individual creatures that when you're a kid you don't necessarily get much of an introduction to in Greek mythology, but later on you learn about them and you learn more about the actual tragic aspects of Greek mythology. But anyway, thank you for listening. Bye.